Hi, I'm Chris the Pinball Noob, and my Lethal Weapon 3 here needs a lot of work. So let's dig in.
That magic smoke.
Alright, so if you saw my last video, I mentioned a couple things that were wrong with this machine that I want to fix. In particular, one of the power boards has a burned connector, so half of the back box lights are out, and also none of the GI is lighting up, even with new bulbs in it. Some of the plastics are broken, like this guy here. And since that last video, a new development, one of the drop targets broke off. So what I'm planning to do is fix a bunch of stuff. First of all, I have some new drop targets with decals. You can see in the back there. Got these from Marco. Also have replacement plastics for some of the worst plastics I have. I have new drop targets. These are going to replace these drop targets back here, which are very badly busted. I may have messed up. I got the transparent ones. I've heard these are actually pretty brittle and fragile. And if you get the opaque yellow ones, they last a lot longer. So I'll use these for now, and then when these break, I might replace them with the opaque yellow. I'm also going to do a full LED upgrade. Got these from Comet. And then a full rubber replacement from Titan. These rubbers still work, but they're getting a little old and stiff. I also bought a mod kit from someone on Pinside. The plastic actually peels off, and these are clear acrylic. And what these will do is add little protectors over the targets to prevent air balls, which if anybody's ever played a Lethal Weapon, you know, you hit this bank and it shoots balls and they go and hit the side like constantly. So this kit is supposed to prevent air balls, so that'll be nice. Also got a shiny new Data East decal to replace this one here that's pretty beat up. And most importantly, I'm going to be doing some rewiring, resoldering, and repinning of the burned up board in the back box. So hopefully we can get all these lights to work. There's also, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but the bottom line on the DMD is not working. And maybe the far right line also. So I'm going to mess with the wiring on the DMD and try to get that working as well. Eventually, I'd like to replace the DMD with the color DMD, but those are a little expensive, so I might not do that right away. But anyway, step number one is get into the head, and let's remove the that burned up board and try to fix it. All right. So what I'm going to do is remove this board right here, because this connector up here is burnt with cut wires, and I think they actually soldered some wires to the back of the board, which probably means I'm going to have to cut some wires, which I don't want to do, but you got to do what you got to do. So step number one, I'm just going to unplug everything. Looking at the rest of these connectors, they look pretty good. I don't see any other burned up looking ones. So I'm hoping the problem was isolated to just this connector right here, which is very burnt. Wires are cut, and actually they cut off two whole segments on the end there. It's supposed to be a 9-pin. They cut it down to a 7-pin. So yeah, that's definitely a problem right there. But we got all the connectors off, so I'm going to unscrew the board. And yes, as I feared, they soldered some wires directly to the board. I'm going to have to go ahead and cut those, and we'll have to rewire those later. All right, so now that I've got the board out, we can take a little closer look at the problem here. You can see there's some evidence of burning on this side. Doesn't look terrible, but watch what happens. And now look at the back side. So you can see, first of all, where they soldered all those wires on, but second of all, these pins are just completely disconnected. The solder's burnt off. Yeah, those aren't making connections to anything. So I have a new header, or a new, whatever you call this. I'll replace that, and I'll find where these wires are supposed to go in the connector, replace that too, and hopefully I don't see any major problems with the traces themselves. So yeah, this should repair pretty well. And hopefully we'll have lighting back up and running pretty soon here. All right, I'm here in my lab. I got my little 9-pin header that I'm going to replace this with. And I'm also going to remove all these wires. Or no, not that one. Always make sure what you're actually going to be doing surgery on before you do it. So yeah, I'm going to remove these. I'm going to desolder all these and then put the new header on. That's the plan. And yeah, that's flowing the solder right away there. So as it turns out, when you hold the soldering iron against the wire, the whole wire gets hot even with the insulation on. So don't be dumb like me. Use a pair of tweezers. So what I found is you can actually just wiggle these pins loose if you unsolder from the back side. All right, the header is off. I'm going to clean this up a little bit, and then I'll work on getting the new header on. I removed the 8th pin there. It's on the board, it's not listed, and in the header it actually has a key there, a little plug. So I'll leave that one out. The rest of these are fitting in pretty good. Some of the trace circles are not fully seated, but I'm hoping with some solder they should stay secure. Alright, I've got the header held in place by 2 dabs of solder on the ends. So I'm going to go ahead and fill in the rest. I'm going to make sure they're all making good contact with their traces and their pins. Want to make sure the solder flows down into the pins. I'm using the plier handle just to support the pins and push them up. Make sure everything is well seated. All right. I've got 8 nice little hills of solder here. They all look to be independent. They're all nice and snug. All right, let me get out the multimeter and I'll test some connectivity. All right, multimeter's in connectivity mode. If we have connectivity, it'll beep. So I'm just going to follow these traces and make sure the tip here has connectivity to where it looks like it should. So that one's good. And good. And just to be extra sure, I'm going to test the pins to make sure there's good connectivity through the solder joint. Nice. I think this board is done. And Loxley the Pinball Cat refused to be left out. I wouldn't let him up here while the soldering iron was hot, but he wanted to come say hi. All right, we are back in the head. Going to put our freshly fixed PBB board back. I don't actually know what PBB stands for. It says PBB down here. I'm sure it stands for something. But let's get this back, and then we'll move on to step 2. All right, nice and snug. You can plug almost all the connectors back in. All right, everything's back in and seated nicely, except for this mess of a J5 connector. So this is going to be job number 2. Turning this into something like this that can just plug straight in. So I've got a connector, I've got some pins, and I'm going to have to do quite a bit of rewiring on this because somebody made a mess of this. Yep, so let's move on. So a little development. I got this the PPB board back in. I was getting ready to start cleaning up this mess of wires here. But I did some reading and they said to check the power board as well. And I noticed this repair up here. These are not the original connectors. And I took it out and that connector's all burned up and falling apart. And this connector is in pretty bad shape. I doubt those are even making contact at all. So this could be a big part of the problem with the lights as well. So I'm going to have to go ahead and fix this also. I'm going to take this power board off. Thankfully, that's another 9-pin connector, which I bought 2 of just in case. So I should be able to get that fixed. It's just a little extra work that I need to do. So let's do it. All right, so I'm back in the lab with another board, doing basically the same thing as the last board. I'm just removing these header pins and replacing the header. Let's do it. All right, so you can really see how bad shape that header was in. Basically was falling apart as I was unsoldering it, and just pulls right off. Burnt to a crisp. So I'll clean this up and we'll get the new header in. All right, looks pretty good and clean. So let's get the new header on. All right, that's another header replaced. Nice and secure. Looks pretty good. Now we got to go do those connectors. All right, so I got both connectors repinned, rewired, and plugged back in. The J5 down there, and the CN8 up there on the power board. I didn't record all the repinning because that's boring and tedious, but this is what it looks like done. And now let's fire it up and see if it's all fixed. All right, I'm going to turn it on. Either all these lights are going to turn on or it's going to blow up and start smoking. So let's see what happens. Oh, okay. So there's a little bit of an issue happening with the sound, but all the lights are working. All right, something's not happy, but we're making progress. All right, final update for this video. As you can see, everything at the moment appears to be working. I was a little worried in that last video I shot when I first turned it on. It was doing this reset loop thing, which doing some research might be related to the 5 volts on the power board. So I need to look into that. That'll basically just be poking things with a multimeter and trying to figure out where the 5 volt might be going bad. But for now, I accomplished my number 1 goal, which was to fix the lighting. So you can see now all the lights in the back box are now working. The ones that were out in the last video were actually just the little wedge bulbs were not seated in the connectors very well. So I'll overlay a video of me fiddling with the bulbs, trying to get those to work. So I started the game up and a bunch of these backboard lights were still out, which had me worried. I thought maybe I had wired something incorrectly. But it turns out wedge bulbs just suck. They have to be seated very precisely in order to work. So I've just been going through the backboard, wiggling all the bulbs until they turn off. But after tweaking all the bulbs in the back box, they now all work, so there's nothing wrong there. And more importantly, down here, you can see like under this slingshot, those bulbs are working too. Those are called GI, the general illumination. And that was really the main thing I was trying to fix by doing all the re-pinning and resoldering. So that's working. You can see one under there near the bumper too. So this game has a lot more light now, which is nice. And I'm going to put all LEDs in it, which will brighten it up even more. You can see that one's out, so needs a new bulb anyway. And while I do that, so basically the next steps for the next video, I'm going to take all the plastics off. I'm going to give the playfield a nice clean. And then I'm going to put it back together all with brand new LEDs, brand new rubbers, and a couple new plastics to replace ones like this that are broken. I'm also going to replace the drop targets, like the broken ones you see there. Or no, these are stand-up targets. These are drop targets. I'm going to replace these because this one's broken. And yeah, it's going to be looking a lot nicer once I get it all back together. So stay tuned for that. Like and subscribe if you want to see updates. And I will post my progress as I go. All right, thank you for watching. All right, super quick update. I replaced some capacitors on the power board, and now everything's fixed. So I guess you could say we're
Back in action.
back in action. All right, thanks. Bye.